So the Performer 7 has been getting some hype recently, but you know how it is here. I'm here to bring everyone back to reality. And the P7 for the most part is a decent IEM. It doesn't have any major flaws since it does follow a neutral balance tuning with good treble extension. It's pretty safe overall, although it does have some noticeable planar timbre and you know it's using custom BAs, whereas the competition is using branded ones. But the overall sound is clean, it's safe, it's laid back, and it's balanced with some sizzle in the treble. And it actually reminds me of the Dusk, but just as good both tonally and tech-wise. Now that doesn't mean the Performer 7's technical performance is bad, because it's actually pretty solid. It's not a value monster, but the P7, you know, performs as expected of an IEM around $200, and it's slightly behind the Quintet and the Super Mix 4 around the same as the Nova. Bass texture is also decent, it's well controlled, it's tight, it's not gonna bleed into the mid-range, it's not gonna be as bouncy and impactful as the Odyssey or the Arcadia, nor does it have that like impact, the rumble and the slam when you compare it to some bassy sets like the Doscincos and the Cinco Tres. However, the P7's bass, you know, it's tight, it's clean, and the dual smaller 6mm DDs gets the job done, as it doesn't get in the way of the rest of the mid-range since the mids are pretty well separated and with good layering on top. But I do wish A4 would have used better drivers or bigger drivers for the bass, because when you compare these smaller 6mm DDs to the bigger dual 10mm ones on the Hype 4s and the T Pros, they are frankly a little bit outclassed when it comes to the impact, the rumble, and the overall slam, and just the engagement. It is noticeably a little bit like weaker when you compare to the bigger 10mm ones. The vocals also lack a bit extension and power. It's a little bit too laid back and safe, which A4 does try to address by boosting the 1.5K to try and, you know, push them more forward. But because the P7 is missing the entire, you know, 3 to 6K region, no matter how forward you boost the vocals, it just won't feel as open, and you know, it lacks the final bits of the vocal extension. Now, a tamer upper mids region is actually beneficial when it comes to rock and metal, because it does get fatiguing in those genres. However, because the low end doesn't have just enough impact and slam or power, the drums and the bass line just feels uneventful. The sound is well balanced, but it's a bit boring. And because the P7 is a mid-volume set and doesn't scale too well, this does mean that if you do try to, you know, turn up the volume to hear the bass line, the drums, or the vocals better, it just ends up getting a bit much when it comes to vocals, because the 1.5K is boosted, as well as, you know, the sizzly treble is also boosted at higher volume. For example, the snares on Time by Hikaru Tada is pretty much unlistenable at higher volumes, as well as many electronic tracks that just are very exciting in general. But if you do listen at mid-volume, it's actually pretty nice for K-pop, because the vocals are, you know, tamer. If you don't mind the sizzliness and the treble and, you know, less extended vocals, then it is a pretty, you know, enjoyable laid-back set for K-pop. The treble isn't peaky or sharp. It's pretty decently smooth, but you will run into some of that like sizzly planar timbre. However, you do run into a catch-22 situation with K-pop, because the female vocals don't sound as sweet as something like the Super Mix 4, the Chopin, because of the upper mids cut. They don't sound as extended and open. And a lot of you guys, I know you like listening to K-pop for the female vocals, so that might be like something to look out for. So basically, you end up at this weird spot of vocal mediocrity where you can't turn it up, but it also doesn't sound like fully extended and amazing at mid-volume either. If you want the best bang for your buck performance-wise, there are just also better options. I feel like I'm repeating myself every video, but the Nova, Chopin, Quintet, Super Mix 4 are all going to be way better bang for your buck than the Performer 7. And then on the other hand, you can't really buy it for the tuning alone, because it's not very unique. It kind of just exists. When I was doing a review, I kind of just want to get over with, because I just wanted to stop listening to it, because it is a little bit bland sometimes. So ignoring the cost to performance ratio, the P7 isn't unique enough tonal wise, as there are better sets that specializes and does like certain genres way better than the P7. For example, if you want something neutral and clean, the TANCHJIM Origin doesn't have planar timbre. It's more natural sounding. It has better, more extended vocals, better bass texture. The mid bass sounds a bit harder for rock, and it's still very well extended in the treble as well. So if you're going for that type of sound, the Origin would just be a better option in my opinion. And then on the other hand, if you want something with more sub bass than the Origin, then there's also the DYNAQUATRO with its clean and balanced sound, but with better bass texture and vocals, and again, no planar timbre versus the Performer 7. If this came out last year, I think A4 would have been fine, because there were less options and competition then. But nowadays, if you come out with IEM that isn't different or unique, or doesn't do something better than a pre-existing IEM, especially when you're using custom BAs as well, then you're just gonna get bodied by the competition. For example, even though the original P5 isn't as technical and I guess like refined as the P7, at least it was fun, you know, and it's also a lot cheaper than the P7 on sale and no planar timbre as well. And then you also have the Explorer for 2 times less, no planar timbre, scales amazingly well, very relaxing, has its own niche in the market, whereas with the P7, again, it kind of just exists. So you really need to know what you're going for, and you need to do it well, or else you might, get passed by Sci-Fi because it is pretty relentless. For example, the Arcadia is a good example of what you should do in the current market. Now, the Arcadia is not technical at $200. The Super Mix 4, the Nova, the Chopin, the Quintet, even the Performance 7 is going to be all better when it comes to like value to performance. And it does sound a little bit too warm, too smooth, and borderline dark at mid volume. The vocals are even more recessed than the P7, and at mid volume, I would not really recommend the Arcadia. However, it does have a niche. The bass is great, it uses high quality drivers, and most importantly, it scales very well. I don't know if it's just a trend, but lately there have been a lot of IEMs that just does the scaling side very good, and this is one of them. With scaling at higher volumes, Arcadia becomes a bassy, comforty set that you can blast for hip hop, rock, metal, and it reminds me of the Mega 5 ESC bass at higher volumes, smooth, warm, and relaxing, but still pretty well balanced for the most part. It's not a neutral or balanced sound by any means. The bass is more forward, it's thicker, it's very thumpy, and it fills the sound and has better bass texture than the Performance 7, and it's overall just more engaging when it comes to the low end. The drums go harder, the sub bass is deeper, you feel the rumble more, and with scaling, the vocals come out, they're more forward, they're fine. It's not gonna be a vocal centric set, obviously, but at least you can fix the vocal issue with scaling, which you can't really do on the Performance 7. And the Arcadia also doesn't have planar timbre. So even though the Performance 7 is the better all-rounder, it is more replaceable in my opinion. Like the Origin, the DYNAQUATRO is just a straight up better version of it at the same price, whereas the Arcadia is more unique and it has its own spot in the market at its price. Now versus the Odyssey, the Arcadia is warmer, it's more relaxing, it's bassier with the focus being in the low end, whereas the Odyssey is more technical, it's cleaner, has better separation, and the treble is a little bit more airy with more mid-range focus. Both scale equally great. If your library is mainly hip-hop, rock, or metal, then the Arcadias would be better since it is fuller, it's thicker, it's more thumpy in the low end, whereas the Odyssey is better for instruments, acoustics, and indie alternative bands. And compared to the Doscincos, I was surprised at how close these two actually are. Both are amazing when it comes to hip-hop, rap, they're bassy, low-end focus, with the main difference being that the Arcadia is basically just a warmer Doscinco that scales better. At mid-volume, the Doscinco will still be the better pick. Vocals come across more complete and balanced while giving you that full, impactful, and textured mid-bass, but because the extra upper mids on the Dos doesn't scale as well as the Arcadia, it's not as immersive and it's not as like relaxing and warm as the Arcadia. So if that's your thing, then the Arcadias will still be better pick. Then versus the KE4, both are very similar in that they are high volume sets. They're warm, they're bassy, they have great scaling. The treble is going to be better extended on the KE4s. It gives you more air and more micro details when it comes to the treble, whereas the Arcadia is going to be smoother, it's going to have more low end, it's more low end focus, it's a little bit warmer and reminds me of a bassier Explorer. I wouldn't say they're a direct upgrade to the Explorer because it is a little bit warm tech wise. They're fairly close. It's more like a side grade if you want something bassier and something warmer, but still very good at scaling. So if you like the Explorer, you're most likely gonna like the Arcadias since they do share a similar DNA but just slightly different when it comes to the low end. So yeah, in order to stand out in 2024 and 2025, you either need to have a unique sound, provide value price wise, being cheaper, or being the best at a specific thing, or else you end up just being another set that kind of exists and will probably be forgotten, kind of like the Performance 7. But aside from that, I hope this review was helpful. Thanks for watching guys, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Roark's Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Discall Scaldus, B Urak, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Patrick, Polly J, Mr. Gorillas, Anton Risto, Gis Seng Yan, Ed Dunlap, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, 777 ZK, Ben Thompson, Asher, Obi, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Triple Well Extended, Wizard, Frickalicious, Luigi, Andric, Ricardo, Tapas, and Nathaniel. Thank you guys so much.